Hi, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start exactly in 1 minute while everyone gets settled in and joins our webinar room. So again, we want to extend a warm welcome. We're happy to have you here with us today for our webinar. Okay, so we are going to get started. Next slide, please. Welcome to today's webinar, Educator Wellness, Filling the Well. This webinar is sponsored by the Northeastern Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center, or MHTTC, housed at Rutgers School of Health Professions in the Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions. My name is Gati, and I'll be facilitating the webinar today. The MHTTC is funded by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, to enhance the capacity of the behavioral health and other related workforces to deliver evidence-based and empirically supported practices to individuals with mental illnesses. Please visit the MHTTC Network website for additional information at mhttcnetwork.org. Next slide, please. The MHTTC, if you're interested in staying up to date with the events and products the Northeastern Caribbean MHTTC is providing, we ask that you please sign up to receive our email communications at the bit.ly link that's provided on the screen. I will also share this link in the chat box. Next slide, please. Following the webinar, you will be asked to complete a brief survey. We value this feedback and use it to improve our activities and inform future activities. These surveys are also important because our continued funding is linked to the completion of these surveys, so we thank you in advance for your feedback. Next slide, please. We also want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our website along with the PowerPoint slides in the next few days. Next slide. This presentation was prepared for the Northeastern Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center under a cooperative agreement from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA. All material appearing in this presentation, except that taken directly from copyrighted sources, is in the public domain and may be reproduced or copied without permission from SAMHSA or the authors. Citation of the source is appreciated. We ask that you not reproduce or distribute this presentation for a fee without specific written authorization from the Northeastern Caribbean Mental Health Transfer Center. At the time of this presentation, Tom Codir served as Acting Assistant Secretary for Mental Health and Substance Use at SAMHSA. The opinions expressed herein are the views of the speakers and do not reflect the official position of the Department of Health and Human Services, or SAMHSA. No official support or endorsement of DHHS, SAMHSA, for the opinions described in this presentation is intended or should be inferred. We encourage you to interact with our presenters during the webinar by using the chat feature. Please post any comments or questions you have in the chat, and I will collect your questions as we go and ask them of the presenter during the Q&A times toward the end of the presentation. During the webinar, our presenter may post questions to you, so please use the chat feature to answer those questions. The MHTTC network uses affirming, respectful, recovery-oriented language in all activities. This includes language that is strength-based and hopeful, inclusive and accepting of diverse cultures, genders, perspectives, and experiences, language that is healing-centered and trauma-responsive, language that invites individuals to participate in their own journey, language that is person first and free of labels, is non-judgmental and avoids assumptions, language that is respectful, clear, and understandable, and consistent with our actions, policies, and products. Now let's begin our webinar. We have PJ Wenger and Carol Sanabia Velez with us today. PJ is our center school mental health lead and senior training and consultation specialist. She has over 29 years of experience working in the field of mental health and has spent a considerable amount of time in a variety of settings, developing her counseling experience. These settings include psychiatric emergency, inpatient treatment with both adults and children, in-home counseling for mental health issues, residential treatment, schools, and private practice. In the school setting, PJ has worked at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. In addition to this experience, PJ has been a trauma responder at the local, state, and national level. She has responded to large events like 9/11 and Hurricane Sandy, as well as traumatic events that affect schools, such as suicides, traumatic deaths of staff, students, and homicide. PJ is licensed by the New Jersey State Board of Family and Health Practitioners and is a certified member of the National Board of Certified Counselors. She has a master's in counseling and an EDS in marriage and family therapy. Carabel Sanabia Velez is also our senior training and consultation specialist and mental health and school mental health lead for Puerto Rico, and is a fully bilingual clinical psychologist. She has over 7 years of clinical and research work performing with federal, community, and nonprofit organizations, using the knowledge gained with her postdoc degree in trauma. She developed and provided workshops, documentation, and psychoeducation with an evidence-based methodology to foster and increase the resiliency of the Puerto Rican population. Carol has worked on federal proposals targeted at helping minority and Hispanic populations who suffered during post-Hurricane Sandy in New York City. She has also collaborated as a therapist and consultant in the development of new proposals for projects with the purpose of training mental health specialists in resiliency and trauma post-Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. I'm going to turn it over to our presenters. Again, welcome everyone.
Welcome, everybody.
PJ, we cannot hear
Okay,
you.
I'm sorry. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So because this is a wellness seminar, we are going to start with a 3-minute meditation just to get ourselves grounded and to really begin to, as Kadi said, work on our own journey, which is what wellness and self-care is all about. So I'd like you to join me in just a brief meditation. If you don't feel that you can participate, you can just close your eyes and listen to the guide.
And rest your hands on your knees.
Oh, sorry. Let's take it back.
Mike. Breathing. Close your eyes and rest your hands on your knees. Bring your attention to the touch of your body on your seat. Feel the weight of your body on your chair or cushion. Make sure that your back is straight and that you're comfortable. Take a few deep breaths. While you're breathing deeply, relax your shoulders, your stomach muscles, the muscles in your face, your hands, and your legs. Let go of all the tightness in your body. Now bring your attention back to your breath. Notice what it feels like as it enters through your nose, goes down through your throat, filling your lung, and back out through your nose. Notice your stomach and chest rise and fall each time you breathe in and each time you breathe out. And just allow your breathing to be natural and relaxed. Now bring your attention to the feeling of your breath in your nose. Feel your breath as it comes in and goes out. Just focus on this sensation, paying attention to each time you breathe in and each time you breathe out. As you inhale, maybe your breath feels cool. And as you exhale, maybe it feels a little warmer. When your mind wanders, or if you become distracted, just notice what's going on in your head, and then gently bring your attention back to your breath, going in and out. Focus on the feeling of your breath and allow thoughts and feelings to come and go in the background. Now gently bring your attention back to the touch of your body on your seat and open your eyes.
Okay, so that's a nice way to start when we're talking about wellness. And our objectives today are to really talk about how educators have been affected in the current times. And we're going to talk about burnout, compassion fatigue, compassion satisfaction. We're going to do some assessments to really find out where we are functioning in terms of those three terms. We're going to look at some signs and symptoms because sometimes we miss that we're experiencing these things. We're going to offer you some practical strategies and hopefully develop a mini self-care plan to allow you to, again, on your journey, develop a more in-depth self-care plan for the future. So the first thing we want to ask is, and you can put this in the chat box, is what has been your biggest challenge this year? So when we think of challenges, has it been a challenge with our family? Has it been a challenge with our job? Has it been a challenge with our own self and maybe how we're handling things? So again, what has been your biggest challenge of the year? And Kadi and Carabelle, I'm going to ask you to monitor that chat box.
Okay, we have people seeing keeping our students to focus, teaching with foot injury, all the changes on the job, not being able to socialize with others. The biggest challenge has been getting students to complete assignments, not having a separation between work and home since we are working from home.
So all of these things that you're talking about, challenges with our students and getting them engaged and motivated and trying to do what they need to do and balancing our life work and play. I like to do life work and play in there, and really dealing with all the changes both in the school and the workplace and also in the world. Certainly the changes of, no social events, then we can have little social events. So lots and lots of challenges. And these things can all lead to our three conditions. And so when we're looking at it, we really have to decide as a person working in the field, what is it? Is it burnout? Is it compassion fatigue? Or is it secondary traumatic stress? And I'm sure everyone is familiar with the two terms burnout and compassion fatigue. You may not be as familiar with secondary traumatic stress, and we're going to talk about that so everybody is very clear about what these three terms do mean. So when we talk about burnout, burnout is, again, work-related stress, and it causes physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion. And that is caused by this long-term exposure to demanding work situations. So the changes in schooling from in-person to remote to hybrid and all the other manifestations in between has created some really demanding situations on our educators. I hear it from educators all the time. And again, while burnout obviously has something to do with stress, overdoing things, not being balanced or center, not really listening to ourselves and what we need when we're exhausted, we just keep going. All of these things contribute to burnout. But the biggest one, according to Dr. Brewer, who is making this quote, is the deep disappointment of not living up to our true calling, which is to help. So not feeling like we're doing enough, not feeling like we have all the tools we need to maybe engage the students, or feeling like we're failing them in some perspective, or failing ourselves, and all of these things can lead to burnout. And so when we're talking about burnout, we really want to look at the causes of burnout. And burnout is a little different than compassion fatigue and secondary traumatic stress, and you'll see the differences. But burnout comes from a lack of control. And there have been a lot of things we have not been able to control. We haven't been able to control whether the students were in person or remote. We haven't been able to control whether the school went hybrid, remote, in person, not at all. Here in the States, on the mainland, the schools were closed for a period of time. I know that in Puerto Rico, our neighboring, your neighboring island, that schools have been closed for, periods of time, and then opened, and then hybrid. So again, we can't control any of that. So when we're normally educators and we're in a classroom and we're teaching, we can pretty much control our environment. It's our classroom. We decide what happens there. We run the show. This has really caused us to be out of control. And there, again, leading to the next thing, there's been really unclear job expectations. So I know here there was, student goal objectives for teachers were eliminated, but then some schools were saying, oh no, we're doing those. Test scores were saying they weren't going to be counted, but then some places they were counted. So again, that very unclear what is going to work, what is not going to work. If leading into these conditions around the pandemic, we had a dysfunctional workplace dynamic, that also has been exacerbated. So a dysfunctional workplace dynamic could be something as there were already some underlying problems in our schools in terms of maybe staff cohesiveness or communication up and down the ladder, or just an ability to be involved in the decision-making process. And if those things already existed, then with the pandemic, they've been exacerbated. Sometimes there's a mismatch in values. What the schools think is important don't necessarily match my values as an individual. I know when I worked in schools as a counselor, the emphasis on the schools was always the test scores and how the students measured up in the test scores. And in my values, the student was more important than the test score. So that was a mismatch that I had to come to terms with and figure out how to operate in that. If it's a poor job fit, sometimes if I'm in a public school and I have a lot of students and I'm in a classroom of 33 students or 43 students, maybe a job fit works better for me if I'm in a charter school or a private school where my classrooms are maybe 12 students or maybe 20 students. So again, is it a poor job fit? And then extremes in activity. And we have seen that in a normal school year, there's lots of extremes of activities around certain years, beginning of years, mid-year, end of years. But it seems that there's been a lot of extreme of activities during this time. So all of these conditions can contribute to burnout. Burnout risk factors. So if I identify so strongly with what I do, if there is no balance in my life. And I've heard this a lot from educators who say, I feel like I'm working 24/7 now that I'm home. There used to be educators who had a drive to school or a commute. And so during that time, they could decompress or maybe think about other things. Or I had some clients who did online books. And so that really helped them. And now they don't have that. And of course, even if you didn't have that piece, you worked and then you went home. And with the whole work at home, it now seems that those two have kind of meshed together. And that's been very stressful. If there's been a high workload or overtime. So I know that because a lot of educators were not used to the remote platform and didn't teach in remote, that learning these remote platforms in the emergent nature in which they had to was very taxing on them, both emotionally and physically. And again, I had teachers say to me, I did not sign up for remote work. I didn't sign up to be an online teacher. They like the in-person. When we're trying to be everything to everyone, we're trying to meet all our students' needs and meet all our family needs and, cook dinners and do shopping and do all of that. I call that the, superhero syndrome. And again, that can also contribute to burnout. Anytime you're working in a helping profession, and I certainly consider education to be a helping profession because we are helping children to grow and be successful. So anytime you're working in a helping profession, that automatically can contribute to a burnout condition. Again, we talked about the feeling that you have no control. And the last one is usually a risk factor for burnout. The job is monotonous, but I find that in this day and age, there has been very little monotony because there's been so many changes and been so many things that people have had to learn. And the other burnout risk factor that I want to mention that's not on here is really uncertainty. And we have dealt with a great deal of uncertainty, both in terms of our social environment, our peer culture, our educating environment. So a lot of uncertainty that people have been addressing. So what does burnout look like? I don't know if I need to tell you all this, but we're going to go through this. So having to drag myself to work, and that used to be getting in your car and going to work. Now it's getting out of your pajamas and maybe putting on some work clothes and turning on the camera and getting in front of the camera. So again, do I have to drag myself there? Being very cynical or critical about our work. I'm not doing enough. It's not good enough. The students aren't learning. They're not engaged. So I must be doing something wrong. There's been a lot of internalizing by educators that I've seen because of the reactions of students and families to the remote learning. So that whole piece of engagement, some of our students aren't engaging, and it has nothing to do with how well an educator is doing their job or a counselor is doing their job in the school. It has to do with maybe they don't have the bandwidth at home, or maybe they don't have internet, or maybe they're now at home doing childcare and they can't be on their cameras all the time or engaged in school. And so again, that causes a really decreased energy level in our job to want to do our job. Do we have difficulty concentrating? I've heard this across the board, both from the educator side and the student side, that it's hard to concentrate, hard to be online all the time and not physically seeing people in person. And I know when I do trainings, I much more enjoy training in person and seeing that face-to-face contact. So again, having to do that every day, 5 days a week for a certain period of time has been really difficult on both sides. Lack of satisfaction from our achievements. I've heard a lot of educators tell me they don't feel like they're achieving anything right now. And those typical achievement ceremonies that we used to have in schools, we don't have anymore. Again, test scores have been weighted, not weighted. So that's gone back and forth. And that's usually a measure of achievement. And we don't know about that. Feeling disillusioned about our job. That's that whole piece of, I didn't sign up to be a remote teacher. And again, teachers are being very disillusioned. Here in the States, we are seeing a lot of teachers who are putting in for retirement, who wouldn't necessarily have retired from teaching if it not had been for this pandemic environment. And, they're saying, I'm too old to learn all these remote platforms. I don't want to teach remotely. I didn't sign up to teach remotely. I really like my students in person, and this is not for me. And because, again, that uncertainty piece, they're not sure what's going to happen in September. they're just saying, I'm retiring and I'm going to get out. So again, a little disillusioned. Increased use of food, drugs, alcohol to feel better or not to feel. And we have certainly seen that. There's been a large increase in the purchase of wine and beer. We hear people saying more that they're using, they're smoking more, they might be using marijuana, they're vaping more, those kinds of things, because we don't feel good in this environment. And so there has been an increase of that. Change in sleep habits. I have heard people talk about how much their sleep has changed. I participated in a wellness series over the last 4 weeks, and the last piece was on sleep, and people were talking about how they're not sleeping, they're sleeping too much, they're waking up in the middle of the night, or they're not sleeping at all. So again, all of those things changes our sleep habits. And again, don't underestimate how much being on a screen all the time does interfere with our rhythms. So again, and then some of those somatic complaints, I have a headache, I don't feel good, telling ourselves we don't feel good so we don't have to go to work maybe. And then there's compassion fatigue. So compassion fatigue is a little different. That is the state that we experience when we are in the helping profession, and that could be helping people or animals in distress. And it becomes a sort of higher level of tension and preoccupation with the suffering of those that we're trying to help. And then it can create what we call secondary traumatic stress for the helper. So sometimes, what we're seeing is that educators are trying so hard to engage students and so hard to teach and get the learning across that they're becoming exhausted because their students are burnt out, and then they're trying so hard and the students are in distress and they can't help them. I hear that a lot from some of the educators and counselors who knew of students prior to the COVID pandemic who didn't have the best homes and didn't maybe have the best environments at home, and school was really a refuge for them. And so knowing that those students are at home without the help of that respite for 8 hours in school, or at least having adults that really cared about them, or maybe had positive interactions with them, they are very concerned about their students. And so because we're in that constant state of helping those people in distress, it can cause us to have compassion fatigue. And so compassion fatigue manifests in our life, and because we're helpers, we're going to spend a little bit more time on this behaviorally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. We're going to go through all these, but some of the behavioral responses are, being impatient, being withdrawing, moody, regressing back to things that we used to do that maybe bad habits that we've now conquered, but we're kind of regressing back to them. We talked about the sleep and the appetite changes. Physically, we begin to have some somatic complaints. And I tell people, our emotional state manifests itself in our physical bodies all the time. We see that all the time in the trauma work. We see that in people with who experience some mental health concerns long-term. And so these are just some of the signs and symptoms. I'm not going to read them to you, but again, how it manifests itself in our work performance and our personal relationships is more of a concern, I think, sometimes. And in our work performance, we're seeing these things: low morale, low motivation. I've heard teachers say to me, nobody cares. So, why am I putting all this effort in? We're just trying to get by. We're trying to get to the end of the year. I can't tell you how many teachers are now counting the days and telling me how much worse it is now than it was before, avoiding certain tasks. Or obsessing about details. I know that I've worked with several teachers through their evaluations, and they're very concerned about their evaluations, but at the same time, they're not doing the work that they normally would do, so they feel like they're being assessed on something that is kind of surreal. That sort of dichotomous thinking of either or. Sometimes we just, that apathy, I don't care, or we become really negative. Everything is bad, nothing's going to get better. That's sort of that loss of hope, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And again, sometimes those things that happened in the past, like maybe we got a bad eval and we worked ourselves up to a really good place, and now, that bad eval is sort of sticking in our head and we're replaying it over and over again because we think we might get another one. And again, decreased productivity is a big sign. And then in our personal relationships, I always tell people, pay attention to what other people are saying about you. If your coworkers are asking you if you're okay a lot more than they used to, that's sort of a sign. Sometimes we withdraw from each other, and withdrawal and isolation are sort of a caveat in this pandemic environment, because some of us are withdrawing, but some of us are just isolated because we don't want to have contact because of the virus. And so it's really kind of a question about, is it withdrawal or is it isolation? But again, if we're not having as much contact with people, or if, we're not as intimate with people, those are some of the signs, especially with our partners. If we're kind of pulling away from our partners, that's a big sign, or pulling away from our children. Or the opposite occurs when we become overprotective and we're sort of doing that helicopter parenting, or as a partner, we become overprotective. We don't want our partner to go anywhere. And then there's some of these other things like mistrust, anger, blame that we project all over. We become intolerant, we become irritable. We're seeing a lot of that with our first responders. And so then again, there's some manifestations in our cognitive and our emotional. Again, I don't need to read them to you, and we've covered a lot of these, but sometimes again, we become rigid, or we feel less self-esteem. We want to be perfect, but then we could be preoccupied with the trauma. And COVID has been identified as a traumatic event for people. So again, we could become so preoccupied with COVID that we can't really think about anything else. And that's been a problem both on the educator side and the student side. So don't underestimate the power of that. And then emotionally, are we angry? Are we shut down? Or do we have a lot of fear? Again, that feeling powerless and that we don't have any control over things, and again, survival guilt. If we've lost people to COVID, sometimes we do feel that guilt of being a person who has, survived the pandemic. And so how does it manifest in our lives spiritually? And this is the area where I think compassion fatigue is so different than burnout. We really begin to question the meaning of life. Like, why am I doing? What am I doing? What's the purpose? Nobody cares, students are engaged, the families are a mess, so why am I doing this? And we again sort of become apathetic and hopeless, and we begin to kind of do a self-appraisal that is really sort of in a negative frame and not a neutral or a positive frame. Again, a lot of anger at God and the universe, for, why are you doing this? Sometimes we question our religious beliefs. If we are a person who aligns with a religious community, we begin to question, why are these things happening? And really that loss of faith and hope is the most powerful piece of compassion fatigue. And we're seeing that a lot in our educators, our first responders, our doctors, our nurses. So again, compassion fatigue is very different than burnout. And here is just some of the differences, so you can see them side by side. Compassion fatigue is really personal, whereas burnout has to do with more the organization. And we see that, is the work more demanding? Can we control it? Is there uncertainty? Whereas the compassion fatigue is me and how I'm handling the situation. And am I losing my hope and my faith? Those are two big ones for me. Compassion fatigue is more stress related because of the demands that are placed on us, whereas burnout is more stress related to time demands. And again, remote learning versus in person versus having those connections. Compassion fatigue is really internal. It's inside of us. So it's things that we feel because other people are suffering, versus burnout is external factors. We're really tired of remote learning, or we're really tired of our principal or our superintendent saying you have to do this or you have to do that. And then holistically, both of these manifest in our mental, emotional, physical, and behavioral signs and symptoms that we sort of put out there. So again, noticing that the cause of compassion fatigue is our work with students who have been traumatized. And again, we are identifying COVID as a traumatic event, whereas burnout is the demanding toxic and hostile environments. And again, I don't necessarily think that our principals or superintendents have meant to be hostile, toxic in this environment. I think they are struggling as well with how to do this, how to move from in-person learning and the typical school that we were all comfortable and familiar with to remote or hybrid, or how do we get kids engaged, or how do we work with people who have no internet, or how do we work with people who have 5 kids and they can't be on the internet all at the same time, or the internet goes down. So again, a lot of times in organizations during a time like this, it's not necessarily an intentional demanding environment, but it has become very demanding. And then there's secondary traumatic stress. And this one we're going to review. This is sort of a second component of compassion fatigue. It comes out of being repeatedly asked for that demand on our compassion and our working with people in distress. It is certainly work-related, secondary to other people's trauma. So if we've had students who've lost loved ones, or if we've had students who've maybe their parents are out of work and there's been a lot of financial problems for them, and then that leads to some emotional problems and some familial problems. Again, and because we're caring for those people, it becomes secondary stressful events for us. And so secondary traumatic stress is the result of our difficult or painful interactions with our students and their families, and there have been many. So I know that in one school that we work with, there were in the inner city in New York, because there was a large COVID breakout and they lost many people in this little community, that the school was dealing with all these losses, and the teachers were dealing with all these losses that their children had that absolutely prevented them from being engaged in school. And so they had to do some grief work around all those losses to address them and recognize them and acknowledge them to be able to move forward. But it was also very traumatic and stressful for the staff. So what does secondary traumatic stress looks like? It comes on more rapid than burnout and compassion fatigue, which are more long-term over time. It's usually associated with a particular event. In this case, it's been associated a lot with the COVID pandemic and the demands in the environment of which we're living in. Being more afraid of things. And again, afraid of, I hear a lot of fears from educators when the children come back. Is the school equipped to have safe conditions in the school and to have all the students in? And are people vaccinated, and are students vaccinated? And if they're not vaccinated, they can still spread the vaccine, and then am I safe? And so again, being more afraid of things. Changes in sleep and appetite. It's one of the first signs and symptoms of almost any condition, because it's the place where we go. We either eat a lot, we don't eat at all. We're either sleeping or we're not sleeping at all. So again, that's a big telltale sign always that there's a change in our behavior, a change in something that's going on. Reoccurring images of upsetting events. Over the past year and a half, we've had a lot of events in the community that have added to the stress of the COVID pandemic. We've had racial violence, we've had some deaths that have been very notable. And again, some of those videos and images that are on social media can cause us to be very stressful because they are reoccurring images and they are upsetting events. And avoidance of things that remind you of the event. In terms of COVID, there's not too much that you can do to avoid COVID. If you go out, people are wearing masks. It's not a normal world. You can't go to restaurants. You can't get together and socialize. Here, this past Friday, here in New Jersey, where we are, our governor did open up and allow people to have more social gatherings. But again, that's also determined by the area in which you live, and not all places have opened up or done that. So again, it's hard to avoid the reminder of the COVID. So because we're doing a wellness webinar, we're going to be taking some breaks, and I'm going to let Carabelle jump in and lead us in our first break.
Yeah, we're gonna have a 5-minute breaks, but when you are in your break, you can stand up, get a drink, go to the bathroom, just stand up, move around. And I want you to think about a healthy choice at your favorite restaurant when we are taking this 5-minute breaks. So you can stand up, go and get something to drink, go to the bathroom. You have to stand up from where you are sitting right now. So we're gonna do the same. And we will be back in 5 minutes. Okay, we are back. We have already our 5-minute break. I hope everybody stand up, stretch your legs. We're able to go to the bathroom, drink a little bit of water or tea or coffee, something that you like. And can anyone tell me a name of a healthy choice at your favorite restaurant? Let's see, PJ, do you have any? I cannot hear you, PJ, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I would say a big salad at restaurants where like they put all the meat sides on the salad that I can't necessarily get at home.
Oh, that's good. In my case, I love the fruits. When they put fruits in pancakes or something like that, I do like those. Okay, people have already started grilled salmon, water with lemon. That's very good. That somebody else can tell us. Anything else? Kathy, do you have any favorite healthy choice?
Yes. Exactly. Something I cannot get here, but if I'm in Puerto Rico, I usually go to a restaurant and I ask for tostones de pana instead of the regular tostones. And they're
Oh,
supposed to be healthier, but I will indulge myself in a good toston, but it'll be a pana.
that's true. But you can do it healthy ones. You can
Well, I
put it
see,
in the oven.
I
Yeah,
see pina colada in the chat,
Yes,
so.
you
piña
can.
colada. A
Piña
lot of people
colada.
are saying salmon. Oh, I'm sorry, salad. Salad. Yes.
So that's
Sometimes
right.
the salads at a restaurant are a little bit more intricate and they're prepared differently than at home.
Kathy can help us with that. There's somebody trying to get in.
Hmm. Okay, hold on a moment. Rosalind, I will chat with you privately and send you a message.
Fruity drinks, I see, yep, love fruit.
Well, it is very important for us that we are talking about wellness to be able to take just a few minutes, maybe when we are doing a classroom or a meeting, and asking this type of questions. What can we have that is healthy? Or just taking a break. If you feel that you are in a meeting or you're in a classroom and you're seeing that all your students are kind of tired, we can have 5-minute breaks. Just stand up, go to the bathroom. So that way people can be easier. Okay, so I think that Rosalind's being helped by Kathy. That's very good. So PJ, you can keep going with the presentation. We're gonna be having 2 more other breaks, and I hope that we can continue the presentation very good. Thank you, all of you, for your answers.
Okay, so before we go on to the next part of our presentation, I really would just like everyone to somewhere, and you can respond in the chat box, but you do not have to. We want to find out where you think you are functioning at this time. So do you think you're burnt out? Do you think you're suffering secondary traumatic stress? Do you think you're suffering compassion fatigue? And I encourage you to just somewhere on your paper in the corner, write down what you think you are suffering. I don't want to use the word suffering, but where you think you're functioning, because we not necessarily suffer when we have these things, but we're not functioning at our optimal level. So just think about where you think you are at this point in time, and jot that down in the corner, because we're going to do an assessment to really figure out where we are functioning. And that assessment that we're going to do, so I'm hoping everybody has kind of written that down. Again, you don't have to share in the chat. It's okay. I don't know if you want to share that with your coworkers. So we're going to do what's called the Professional Quality of Life Scale, and this is the ProQOL. And in the chat, Kadi is going to put the link to it, but I'm also going to put the questions up on the screen so that you can see it both ways. But the ProQOL is a measure that determines where we are functioning. Are we experiencing compassion satisfaction? Are we experiencing burnout? Are we experiencing secondary traumatic stress? And I use this instrument periodically throughout the year because I'm a therapist and I am a trauma responder and I do a lot of really heavy duty work. I am very conscious about where I am, what I'm experiencing during that time. And I think we all need to be so that we can be the best helpers that we can. And sometimes we miss that. Sometimes we miss, am I burnout? And what do I need to do if I'm burnout? Am I feeling compassion fatigue? And what do I need to do if I'm feeling that? And so I would encourage you guys, you're going to get the link in the chat to the ProQOL. You can either print it out, you can answer it, but I'm going to go through the questions so that you can see, and then we're going to do a self-scoring. And you are going to be able to see where your score measures out. So the first 10 questions I have up on the screen, and the scale is really 1 to 5, 1 being never and 5 being very often. And when I tell people you read the questions, I want you to write the first thing that comes to your mind. So it's not, I'm happy. Am I happy sometimes? No, just the first thing that comes to your mind is the answer that I want you to put down. And that's the important piece, that we don't spend too much time thinking about these questions, but that we really just answer them with our first thought, our first gut reaction. So I'm going to leave these up on the screen and let you all answer them. And if you're doing it at home and you don't have the actual one in front of you that was in the chat, just write down the numbers, 1 and then your answer, 2 and then your answer, because when we score, we're going to go by the number questions. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to write that down. And I think Carabelle and I are going to do it with you, just so that for time's sake.
Are you all able to open the ProQOL? PJ, the link that you're sending, it indicates an error. It's the one that is in your PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, that one, yeah, the one that I gave you to put in the chat box, Kadi, is the one for them to use. So if you can put that one in the chat box that I gave you, the ProQOL questions.
That's a file. That's not. Okay, so that's not a link. That's a file.
No, it's not a link. It's a file that will open up right to the questions.
Got it.
I think I put it in. Let me know if you can able to open what I just sent to everybody.
Yeah, I see it in the chat box. And again, if you can't open it, you can just use the questions that are right on the presentation, and you can just use paper and pencil and write down question 1 and your response, and question 2 and your response. So either way you can do it. We've provided 2 routes for that. Okay, so that's questions 1 through 10. How are we doing? If you can't open it, just use the questions that are on the screen. All right, so I'm going to go to the next set of questions. And again, you're using the same scale for these questions. 1 rarely, or 1 never, 2 rarely, 3 sometimes, 4 often, 5 very often. Same scale. So again, we're just asking you to give the first answer that comes to your head. So actually, we're going to change this up and make it a little easier for you. And Kati is going to screen share the whole thing. Can you do that, Kati?
I believe I can only do it like you from sections since I tried doing it now. So
Okay, so
yeah.
then we'll just leave these up. Okay. We're trying to make it as easy for all of you as we can. So we're just going to leave the questions up for now. And then we might have to share the scoring in sections. Which is okay because people will have to look back and forth with their numbers. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to the next set of questions. Is everybody done? If anybody is not done, please tell me in the chat and I'll leave this up a little bit longer. A few more seconds. Okay, no problems. You asking me for a few more seconds? Not a problem. And remember, first response that comes to your head, I'm going to keep saying that because I don't want people to think about the questions and then think, oh, well, if I say this, this will be the score. Or if I respond this way, they're going to think this. That's why sometimes we're in our head when we're doing these assessments, which is why I tell people to go with the first response so you're out of your head.
Yeah, there's still people doing this question, so leave it a little bit longer. And it is very important just to read the question and just think in which one goes, like if it is nearly, never, rarely, sometimes, often, or very often. Just do it with your heart.
Yep. And ProQOL, the ProQOL is not meant to identify anything negative that you're doing. Like I said, I do this several times a year just to gauge what I'm experiencing in case I miss something. And sometimes I've come up as burnt out. Sometimes I've come up as compassion fatigued. Sometimes I've come up as having secondary traumatic stress. So again, this is not about a negative assessment of ourselves. This is just about gauging what we're experiencing so that we can address it. So everybody who's thinking like they don't want to sound negative about themselves, don't worry about it. It's not about that.
And it is important to us to just take a few moments and think about this and read it and say, okay, maybe I want to know if I am burnout or I have secondary fatigue. And it's okay to feel those things. We are human and we are passing to a lot of stress. So it is important to us to take a few minutes and this type of questionnaires that can help you to get a little more wellness in our life.
Okay, am I ready to move to the last set of questions? Somebody give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat.
Yes, people are saying, okay.
So here we go, the last set of questions. Again, remember your scale: 1, never; 2, rarely; 3, sometimes; 4, often; 5, very often. So again, giving you all a few minutes. Few seconds. Okay, someone is asking to see questions 1 through 10. So let me know if you're done with this set of questions and I will back up. Is everyone done with these set of questions? I'm getting a yes. Okay, so I'm gonna go back. Okay, there's 1 through 10 so that people can get those. So I'll give you a few minutes on that. And again, let me know in the chat when you are done with those questions. Okay, it looks like everybody's done. Is everybody answered all the questions, or do I need to go through them again? Yes, yes. Okay, we're seeing yes. All right. So I am going to, I didn't want to do that. Let's see. Okay, so current slide. So for a minute, I'm going to end this. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute because I want to get the scoring up so that you can all score. Okay, so here's the scoring.
And I think that already Kathy shared with all of you the scoring
In the chat
PDF.
box?
Yes, in the chat box, just in case you have it there.
Yeah, so we're trying to make sure that you guys get this in a different modes so that you have it because it's so important. So here's the scoring. So the first one, and I'll make my screen pretty big so you can see it. There you go. No, I don't want to do that. So here's the scoring. So you're just going to copy the first one for compassion satisfaction is really easy. We have some strange manifestations in the other two, but these are very direct. So you just take your scores from the number. So if for question 3, I had a 4, I write a 4 in the line. Question 6, I write what I had in the line. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to do this. I'm also going to be scoring mine as we go. Like I said, I did it along with you. I haven't done it for several months. So join along with you so that give you a few minutes just to do your first score. And then if you're like me, I have to use my calculator.
No worries, PJ. I'm using also my calculator.
For all those people on the call who are maybe educators of math, we apologize, but
We have a question in the chat about providing the numbers again. She wrote a word with that number.
oh, providing the numbers for the scales.
I think so.
Is
Beverly,
that,
could
so
you-
so if you can write in the chat, Kadi, 1 is
No worries.
never, 2 is rarely, 3 is sometimes, 4 is often, and 5 is very often. Is that what they were asking for?
could you repeat 4 and 5?
4 is often and 5 is very often. So was everybody able to score this first section? I have a yes. Yes, okay, so we're going to go on to the next section. So the next section is the burnout scale, and this is where it gets a little tricky. So anytime you see an asterisk, you're going to reverse your score. So for question number 1, if you had a 5, you're going to give yourself a 1. If you had a 4, you're going to give yourself a 2. So you see that little box down here? That's how you're going to reverse those scores. So anytime you see an asterisk, so it's for question 1, 4, 15, 17, and 29. Okay, how are we doing with scoring that one with that little tricky reversed numbers in it? No, you're not just doing the asterisk, you're doing all of these questions. So you're doing questions 1, 4, 8, 10, 15, 17, 19, 21, 26, and 29, but you're reversing your score for questions that have an asterisk beside that. Is that clear for everybody?
What I did is I just write the numbers and put them, my answers, and then did the ones that I have to convert in the new kind of number, and then zoom those in a separate way. It was a little bit easier.
Mhm.
And yes, I still use my calculator for this one.
Yep, me too. I'm always a calculator person. And if you gave yourself a 3 for any of them, 3 just is 3. So that's a really easy one. This is the only part that's tricky, I promise. All right, are we done? Oh, I see still calculating. Okay, that's fine. We'll give you a few more minutes. It looks like we're done. Okay, I'm going to move it up to the last section, and the secondary traumatic stress scale is straight, your straight answers. There's no changes. I didn't see my sum in. Somebody said they didn't see their sum in compassion satisfaction. So there's the sums. Okay, so we're adding up these. Okay, we have a request to see the compassion numbers again. So in the chat, let me know if you've done the STS scale here.
I just write it also in the chat about the compassion certified scales, but PJ would do it again, show that in a little while.
Yep. Thank you, Carabelle, for writing that. Yep. So is everybody finished? Do you have your scores?
Can you show again the compassion
Yeah,
certified scales
there you
number?
go. Compassion.
Yeah,
There it is.
in the
Yep.
top. Thank
Yep.
you very much.
There's the compassion. Everybody done? So I am going to switch screens again. So coming down on that one, coming back up on this one. All right, so what do our scores tell us about ourselves? This is the important piece. And again, if you want to share in the chat, what I'd like for you to share is if what you said in the beginning that I asked you to write down what you thought you were and what you came out as a score, how did they match? Were you surprised? Did they match what you thought you were? You know, for me, and, you know, I will share. So I came out at, in the moderate zone for all three, but at the very low moderate zone. So 31 for compassion, satisfaction, 32 for burnout, and 28 for secondary traumatic stress. So again, even though that's low on that margin of scale, that I know that I have to be paying attention to some of this. So as a result, I can look at what I'm doing. So again, did your match? Did you say in the beginning, I think I'm burnout, and then your score said, yes, I'm burnout? That's what I want to know. You don't have to tell me what you were. So again, you know, were they what I thought they would be? Now, I'm a little surprised that I came out in all three in that moderate zone, I have to tell you. Usually I'm really pretty extreme in one, and then the other two are pretty low. So this is unusual for me, which tells me that I have to pay attention to something and maybe incorporate something else into my wellness routine. So again, what I would ask you as a result of this is to write down 3 things that you do well while performing your job. What are those 3 things that you do well while performing your job?
So PJ, I'm just going to share also my results.
Oh, thank you.
For example, in compassion fatigue and secondary trauma, I was waiting for high because I do a lot of trauma, and most of the times when I do this test, it comes very high, but it didn't. So that means that what I'm doing into wellness is been helping. So it's moderate, and I have low in burnout. So it was very good. So that means that what I'm incorporated now in my daily routines and taking the breaks and meditating, for example, is something that I do. It's been helping me. So
Okay.
people are also sharing, no, I'm not burnout. Thank God. And some people tell me too, I don't, not what I thought. Somebody also say high, low, and low. I thought that high is compassion probably, and burnout and secondary trauma then is low. Okay, there's another participant that is saying that he thought that burnout will be high, and it is moderate. So probably that means that something that you are doing is helping you to be a little bit more wellness. So that's good. Most of the times we can feel something, but we are doing something good to ourselves and we don't think about it. Like maybe sometimes taking a break or having a healthy dinner or seeing a movie or writing about something can help us in that matter. So thank you for sharing, everybody. I'm going to leave it back to you, PJ.
So I would like you to share in the chat 3 things you do well while performing your job. So think about 3 things that you do well as an educator, if I have counselors on the line, psychologists, what is it that you do well? And just maybe share in the chat a couple things, even if you don't put 3 down there.
So until people start thinking about what they do, I'm gonna share with the people. At this moment, I have included in my desk, this is a fountain. So I put it on and it helped me relax, you see? It helps me relax. So when I'm very stressful, I put it on and I take 5 breathing moments, so that way it can help me and focus again.
Mhm. Wonderful. Thank you, Carabelle. We have good student-teacher relationships. Absolutely. Great thing to do well. Anybody else want to share?
Somebody have say having students feel safe, care, get across to my students. Somebody tells that communicating, I have empathy to others and encourage others to do their best. Somebody else share my students feel comfortable and look forward to learning. So that's very good. Thank you for sharing.
So, again, we're thinking about what our scores tell us. Obviously our jobs is stressful. So for me to ask, is your job stressful? It's kind of a silly question to ask. We know that our jobs are stressful right now. But what is it about your workplace that is stressful? And what are some of the ways you see stress affecting your coworkers? One of the things I said when we were trying to identify is paying really close attention to what the people around us say, especially our children, if you have children. When children say, Mom, you're being impatient, or Dad, you're being short with me, or those kinds of things, I tell people, pay attention to those. Children really read us very well. They're very intuitive. And so when they say things, they're not just being disrespectful or being smart. They're really kind of saying, hey, what's going on? And that for me is a red flag. If my partner says to me, hey, you're really impatient or you're really short, I pay attention to that because they see us in a different place that we don't see ourselves. So again, and what are some of the things that make the work valuable? Why do we do what we do? Some of the things that we really need to incorporate into our wellness is really identifying our worth and what it is that we do that is valuable. And what are some of the things that make this work intrinsically a charge for me versus like a takeaway for me? And so, that's something to really think about. So if you want to share in the chat for a minute, what are some of the things that make your work valuable and why you do it? That would be really wonderful to hear too. I always love hearing from all of you. I don't see we have any people sharing, so I am going to move on. We are going to take another rest break before we get into our other big piece. So I'm going to let Carabelle take that over.
So we are 1:57. We're gonna take 5-minute breaks again, and we're gonna stand up, go outside if you can, or get out of the room where you are. And I want you to think about your favorite activity. So just get out of the room, stand up, and think about your favorite activity. When we come back, I would like to hear everybody what they love to do. That's a very good way to think. Okay, so 5-minute breaks. And we are back. I'm gonna read some of the comments that we have in the chat. Um, when my students met our goals for the day, it is really makes me feel like I'm getting somewhere with them. I love crafting, relieve my stress. Student-teacher relationship, also teacher-parents relationship. I think those are the answers that were you making before we go to the break. So what is your favorite activity, PJ?
My favorite activity is being with my horse.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
How
My,
about you?
I love the beach, but I love just sitting in a blanket, feeling the warm arena and seeing just the water going and coming and the smell. I don't know. It's make me refresh. Kathy, can you share with us what is your favorite activity? I don't know that we can.
Oh, yes, same as you. Being by any kind of water, beach, thank goodness here in the state of New Jersey, we're surrounded by coastline. So any season you can always go to the beach. Even when it's cold, you can always walk by the beach.
Yeah, that's true.
I do agree with you guys. Prior to COVID, I was in the US Virgin Islands on St. Croix and St. Thomas, and the beaches there are spectacular. So
Yeah, I will say that even going to a road very close to the beach, like if I go, I just put down my car winds and I will feel I don't know, it's totally different. There's a lot of people saying about the beach and people saying that they were there yesterday. So that's very good.
yeah.
Very. Okay, so it is very important for us. So we know already having healthy habits when we go to our favorite restaurant, something that we like to eat, and now identifying our favorite activity. I also like to color. So when I have a very stressful day and I finish, I just color one page, use a lot of them, and it's very nice. Even that it's raining or something, I will do that. Even taking a shower, just taking a time for ourselves is something. People are also saying listening to music. That's very good. I also like that one. So thank you for sharing, and I'm gonna leave you again with PJ so we can continue.
Okay, so we're going to go on. So there's a lot of challenges for our self-care, both positive and negative. I know when I talk to anybody about self-care, including educators, first responders, nurses, doctors, they tell me that they know some of these things are positive for them, but that they don't have time, or they don't know when to squeeze them in. And again, these things that we do for self-care help us to lower these numbers in these areas of burnout and compassion, fatigue. And so breathing is something that I encourage educators to do all the time. And in fact, I encourage them to not only do it, but to teach it to their students. Because if in the middle of a class, if you see the student, you're losing the students, you can stop and say, let's take a brain break. Let's take a breathing break. Let's all close our eyes and take a deep breath in and take a deep breath out. Body work. Body work isn't about I have to go to a class and I have to take a yoga class or a Tai Chi class, or I have to watch a videotape. It can be just moving our bodies. And one of the things that we've learned in the work of trauma is that it's really important to get people back into their bodies, however that looks. If it looks like standing up. I know when I was in the schools and I went into the classrooms, the first thing I would have the students do is I would just say, everybody get out of your chairs. We're going to stand up. And sometimes I would do a yoga pose. Sometimes I would do the tree pose, or I would, and they would giggle and they would laugh at me, but they would all do it. And then we sat down and they were engaged. So they were with me. Exercise. Sometimes I went in and I said, everybody, let's, stretch our hands to the ceiling and then reach down to the floor, not touch your toes, because not everybody can touch their toes, including me. but just reaching up to the ceiling, reaching down to the floor, moving your body, getting out of that space where you need to move. So, again, we had some of the people who put in the chat, like, taking a bath, being outdoors, watching the beach, those kinds of things, coloring, hobbies. The negative things that we do for self-care that we think are self-care are these other things in this list over here, that overeating and drinking. And I know that there were people who said that once they were working from home, the kitchen was very available. It was right there. And so it was real easy in the middle of the day to reach over and go into the cabinet and get some snacks. And then you might do that again. And then you might do it again. And then eventually you're just eating all day, or I call it grazing. You're just grazing all day. We know that alcohol consumption has gone up. Use of marijuana has gone up. Smoking has gone up. These are things that are challenging for us, because although they may appear like self-care, they're not always self-care. It's not something that is beneficial for us. And so
I'm going to share something with you, PJ, that maybe will help our participant also. For example, my husband works from home also. So what I do with him, because he gets very stressful, is just I make very small snacks and I give it to them, and he's so you only have 3 of them for this time. So that way that can help us not eat a lot. And I also put music. I told him, okay, it's break just to dance a little bit. So that's helped us in some ways.
absolutely. And that dancing is body movement, Carabelle. So even if we do, I know that the students, the teenagers at least, are watching a lot on TikTok. And I know we have some staff people who are TikTok watchers as well, but there's some really funny step moves, dance moves, whatever you want to call them. You can play a TikTok in your classroom, and your students will all know what it's about, and they'll do it. Or you can offer them to bring in a TikTok of movement that we can all try. So again, it's building these into your day so that it's not, oh my gosh, I have to schedule something else. But you will talk to me, you will hear me talk to you about scheduling our self-care time, because a lot of times if we don't schedule it and announce it, those are 2 different things. Scheduling and announcing it, we go through the day, and by the end of the day, we haven't done our self-care. So it's not only scheduling it, like I'm going to, after I finish school from 4 to 5, go for a walk or go for a drive or go to the beach. And I'm telling my family, this is what mom or dad is going to do during this time. So it's a do not disturb time. It's my time. You can all do whatever you want, but this is what I'm doing. So it's really scheduling it and announcing it. Important thing. So we're going to run through, and this one's easier. I promise. I put it in the chat box, the self-care assessment. This is not a scoring one. This is just more of one to identify what you do and what you don't do. So if I'm, you can use this one that's in the chat, or you can go through with me like we did again for the ProQOL. But if you look at this, these are just some ideas of self-care and where we fall on that continuum. So like Carabelle was saying, do I eat regularly, or am I eating all day? Do I make healthy, well-balanced meals, or am I driving by the fast food joint and picking up things that aren't healthy? Do I go to bed at this right time? And this is just for you to really, again, assess yourself. There's no negative or positive. There's no score at the end of this. This is just what I'm doing and what I'm not doing. And you see down here, there's a space for other. If there's other things that you do to physically take care of your body, add them in there. So I heard somebody say they take showers, as a way to self-care. So I could put that in this other spot, showers, and maybe I do that often, and that's a self-care thing that I do.
Somebody in the chat wrote, playing with my dog.
So in terms of the self-care assessment, was everybody able to get it out of the chat box? I guess I should start asking that. Were you all able to access it from the file that I put in the chat box? Yes. Okay, good. So again, you can do this at your leisure. You can do this now. We'll give you a few minutes just to at least look at each category that I'm going to show you and just write some things that you do. So this is the body self-care one. And the next one is the mind self-care one. You know, uh-oh, what happened? Sorry. Okay. So mind self-care. So again, this is psychological first aid, psychological self-care. I'm sorry. And again, look at what's listed on this thing, making time for self-reflection. And we're gonna develop a self-care plan, and you're gonna see that it's important to have a self-care plan for each area that I assess. So it's not only important to have it for our physical body, but it's also important to have a self-care plan for our psychological and for our spiritual. We're going to see a couple more of these. But again, making time for self-reflection. You know, do I do that? Ways to do that are like journaling, which again, the fourth one down, keep a journal to manage my worries or note thoughts and experiences. I sometimes just have a journal for, you know, positive things that happen to my gratitude journal, you know, things that I'm grateful for each day. Because sometimes when we get in a negative space or a space of hopelessness, we can't always think of those things. And then I can pull out my gratitude journal and it's right there, and it helps me to recenter. I have all of my clients have some kind of gratitude practice. We work on it together. And again, the research shows that gratitude practices are absolutely having positive effect on people with severe physical and mental illnesses. So we know that that's working. And again, this is just to see what I do, what I don't do. You know, if I never take time to self-reflect, that might be something that I want to build into my self-care plan, because self-reflection is really an area of growth. These are more of the psychological ones, you know, mapping out our day, you know, sometimes so that we have a place to put in our self-care, you know, recognizing what is and is not in your control. And what should follow that is, and letting go. So letting go of what I can't control. You know, that's something in the field of recovery that we work a lot with people who are in recovery about letting go of what is not in your control. You know, because sometimes in the field of addictions, a lot of the negative behaviors focus around wanting to control things that are out of my control. So that's a big thing in our recovery model is about recognizing things that are out of my control and letting go of that. You know, do something at which you're a beginner. Again, we talk a lot about learning some new skills during this COVID environment. This is some more of our psychological self-care things. You know, spending time outdoors when possible. Carabelle wonderfully had a 5-minute break and told us all to go outside. You know, and again, I don't know what the weather is there, but we've had rain for days. And when I walked outside, I realized that, yeah, the sun is out today. So how nice that we have sunshine again, because that's really important for me. I really love sunshine, vitamin D. I get a lot from being outside in the sun. And because I'm sitting inside today, when I walked out for those 5 minutes, Carabelle, thank you very much, I realized that the sun is shining, and that was so nice for me to see. So again, this is not a score. And if there's something else, again, we have categories for other. If there's something that you do that's not on this list that helps you to take care of yourself in that psychological mode, then add it in. You know, emotional self-care. You know, do I start my day with something that helps me feel regulated? And I know educators always say, I'm so busy in the morning getting ready to go on Zoom, or I'm so busy getting ready to go to school when we were in person. And very rarely do we take a little time for ourselves just to go, whew, just to breathe and be in a space. And again, some of and you'll see we have some apps that we're going to recommend, but one of the apps that I'll talk about is the Calm app. And there's a lot of apps that are free for educators right now because you are educators. So yay for the people who are providing those. But the Calm app has now on it 3 and 5 minute meditations that you can do throughout the day. So I work with teachers in my private practice, and I have them putting the Calm app on their phone and doing a 3 minute or 5 minute meditation. It does not take long, but it is so relaxing and helps you to kind of regulate. So again, 3 minutes. When I'm feeling dysregulated, stop and change the channel. I love that. Do something different that helps you to re-regulate. If I'm feeling stressed, if I'm feeling angry, if I'm feeling frustrated. And again, these are things that you can do in your classroom with your students because they're on the other side of that Zoom or Google Classroom or whatever platform it is you're using, and they're having some of these same feelings. So again, if we can join together and connect in that place, we can do some of these things. But this self-care assessment is just to see the things that you never do, rarely do, sometimes and often, because we're going to use this information to build our self-care plan. Find things that make you laugh. I think laughter is a really important piece. I also think crying is an important piece. So as a therapist, when people come to me and they say they don't cry, my first recommendation is to find a cry movie, one that you can sit and it makes you really sad and you cry, and at least it allows you to cry. And then also, what is that belly busting laughter movie or show or something that you can go to that will always make you laugh? Those two things are tools that I tell people to keep really close to them. Again, some more, emotional help, self-help things. And again, you seek professional support when needed. I am a counselor, therapist, so I recommend that to anyone. If you're feeling like you just need to touch base with somebody, that's a good outlet to do. And again, it gives you somebody out of your realm of daily living to spring things off of. And then we have relationships. How do we do relational self-care? And this is something that is really important and we don't always realize it. So oftentimes when just couples, for instance, get married and they have their lives and everything is wonderful, and then they start having children and children are demanding and our jobs are demanding, and then down the road we eventually forget our partner, because we're working as a team and we're doing things so much, and we kind of get in that rhythm of, you do work outside, I do work inside, you take the kids to karate and dance, I'll take the kids to soccer and baseball. We kind of divide up the duties and we're operating like a well-oiled machine, and that's great. But are we really taking care of that relationship? When is the time that we spend with our partner that is just our time? Where's the time we say to the kids, mommy and daddy are going on a date, or we're having movie night, or, something just for us as a partner to really take care of and nurture that partner in our life so that we don't get to, 20, 30 years down the road, the children have all moved out and we're looking at each other going, I don't know you anymore, because we haven't done that relational self-care. Big one, the third one down, using technology to talk face to face. Yes, people are on the phone, and yes, they're FaceTime. And those are all really good things. And I think that's wonderful. But I also tell people to make time to actually see face to face. So if you have to drive up to somebody's house and talk to them from the car to their porch, have that face to face. That's really important for my teenagers, just to be able to make that face to face connection. And connecting anyway on social media. In the beginning, we had a big push to just connect with people, either Zoom, Google Meets, Netflix movies, a bunch of things that just give connection, and we'll give you some ideas at the end of this as well. But relational self-care is really important as well. Even our friendships. So one idea that somebody told me this year, which I thought was ingenious, was because the holidays came around and she was not able to see people that she normally would see. She wrote each of them a letter about why they were important to her and how not being with them during this holiday season really affected her. And these are her wishes for the future. Great idea. And just mailed it off. Spiritual self-care. Again, a lot of us who are in religious communities, our religious communities were not allowed to congregate because of the COVID restrictions. Some of those are lifting, but were we able to carry that spiritual practice on past that? So our spiritual self-care. So they're giving me a time reminder. I'm talking too much. So again, some more spiritual self-care. You guys have it in your in the place that I downloaded. So workplace self-care. Do I take time to eat lunch? That's a really important thing. When we're working at home, sometimes we work straight through. Creating a workspace that includes things that inspire you. Carabelle showed you her fountain, great one. So what do I do with these things? Taking a self-compassion break, reminding ourselves that it's difficult. How often do we do that? And just, I'm going to be kind to myself today. I'm going to do something kind. Remind yourself of your strength. We asked, what do you do that's really good? And we got some great responses from all of you. Connecting with students, having empathy for families. And the last one, very, very important, creating some separation between work and home. So we take all these ideas, and again, we try to develop a self-care plan, and that's what we're going to do next. So in the chat, I'm going to upload the self-care plan so that everybody can get it. Oh, Connie, I think I, oh, there it is. Okay, so here's the self-care plan. I'm going to put it in the chat for all of you, but I'm also going to show it to you. But some self-care ideas, journaling, volunteering, pets. One of the COVID positive things is that a lot of the pets have been adopted from shelters, and that's been a really positive thing because they've really done some great things for people. So these are just some ideas. You're going to have access to the PowerPoint, so I'm not going to read through them. You also came up with some really good ideas that you do for yourself. So this is the self-care plan, and we're going to ask you to look at it. So self-care for my body, what I already do and what I would like to do. So, again, maybe for my body, I already take some walks, but maybe I would like to incorporate a yoga routine. For my mind, I already do puzzles at night, and what I would like to do is maybe do some meditation. For my emotions, I don't know what I already do. Maybe in that category, I'll say, I don't know what I do. I don't do anything. And so maybe what I'd like to do is laugh more or cry more. And the way I'm going to do that is by identifying a cry movie or a laugh movie for myself. Relationships. What do I do right now for my relationships? Have I called my friends? Am I in connection with my partner? Maybe I would like to have a date night, and I'll put that on. So again, in each of these categories, we're going to write down what we already do and what we would like to do. So real quickly, I would like to have people share in the chat what you would like to do. You don't have to identify the area, but just this is a self-care plan for you to really begin to develop. When Kadi talked about our approach as the MHTTC, she talked about the journey. And self-care is really a journey about what works, what recharges my battery, what really helps me to be the best that I can be. And that's what we're going for. So maybe in the chat, we can share a little bit about what we would like to do for our self-care. And in the meantime, Carabelle, I'm going to pass it on to you before we do our last round.
Okay, I know we are short in time, so maybe we can tell something that we have in our desktop that can help us relax. I'm going to share, I also share already with all of you my fountain. I also have this in my desktop. It is something that my grandmother did with me, and it relaxes me. It reminds me of that good part when we shared that, and I saw her doing that stuff. So it was very good for me. So every time I feel relaxed, I just look at those things and I just go back to the moment and help with the memories. There's some people sharing already. So they go swimming. I also like to have more time, exercise more time for pleasure readings. So that's very good. Something that I also do with my husband is before we go to sleep, I like to say 3 positive things that we have done in the day. I think it's helped me a lot to keep that connection, even that we both of us work at home. Sometimes we have so many things that we're not able to talk about what's happening. And we're just like, okay, we have to do this and that. And so that helps me when before we go to sleep, just saying 2 or 3 things that are very good to us.
Yep, Carabelle, I can't reinforce how important a gratitude practice is like that, at the end of each day, or even in the beginning, when you first wake up. And it doesn't have to be huge things. It doesn't have to be big major events. It could be something as simple as like, I woke up and I was able to stand on my own 2 feet, or I was able to see, or I was able to get out of bed by myself. We take so many things for granted sometimes that a gratitude practice is really, really important.
Yeah, that's very good. I'm a good morning person and my husband is not. So when I wake up, I'm very happy and have a lot of energy. And he goes like, no, I just want to go to sleep. How do you do it? And I say, okay, just let me tell you why I'm happy. So I tell things like I'm able to be able to hug you, or I'm able to just being able to call my mom or see her next day, see the sun. So those things make me happy. And it is important to us to have those things. So people are saying, thank you. I will take that idea. We'll do it tonight before going to sleep. That's a very good one. So I give it back to you, PJ. I hope that these breaks that we have already, it can help you and you can put it in your daily routines. That will be very helpful.
Okay, so wellness strategies, the ABCs of wellness. This is really important. It's like CPR. So ABCs are awareness, balance, and connection. If we can remember those 3 things, that's really important. So awareness is, knowing where we are, being aware of where we are and what we're doing for ourselves, and if that is keeping a journal or meditating or practicing some kind of mindfulness, all of that is important. I'm going to go through balance in our lives, engaging in playful activities, checking out local libraries. Balance includes work, play, and time for ourselves, connecting with colleagues, and we do this through a number of ways. And then we just put in some awareness resources. So some apps that are available to you. A lot of these are available free. You will get this PowerPoint. So again, you'll have access to all this. Some resources that you'll also have access to, three things. In the middle is a soul happy journal, kind of a gratitude journal. And our closing thought is, what is to give light must endure burning, from Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning. So I'm sorry we went a little over. If there's any questions and answers, we'll be happy to do that. We're gonna stay here for a little bit, and the QR code is for the evaluation. So again, the evaluation is tied to our funding, and we are able to provide these trainings free because of that funding when you fill out the evaluations. So please do that. And if you have any questions, you can put that in the Q&A or the chat box, and we'll be happy to field them.
I also added the link for the evaluation in the chat just for you to be able to finalize and do the survey. It will be very helpful for all of you. Thank you very much. Are people saying in the chat? I hope this wellness techniques and self-evaluation have helped you in your journey it is a journey. It's kind of, sometimes it's kind of difficult, but we are able to complete it.
Thank you very much for joining us. And please, everyone, when you leave here, don't just forget what we've talked about. Take that self-care plan and really put something together for yourself so that you are taking care of yourself. Carol, we will email you the code so that you can do the evaluation. We'll remember to do that. Thank you for letting us know that you're on phone. And again, if any of you want to reach out to us, we will put our emails in the chat as well.
Thank you both. So since we don't have any other questions, like I said before, we will follow up with everyone who registered and email you the survey link so you're able to complete the evaluation. And we hope to see you next time at our training events. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take good care of yourself.
Take care. Bye-bye.